inflation rate did ease yesterday from 34.19% in June to 33.40% in the month of July. That was based on the statistics, of course, the data released by the National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, yesterday. And of course, I have my guest in the studio to help us do justice to that. Dr. Adegboyega Adebajo is an investment banker. He joined me right here. Good morning, Dr. Adebajo.
Morning, Yusuf.
Let me quickly get your reaction to that numbers. When you get that number yesterday, or when the NBS released that number yesterday, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
Well, Yusuf, it's very interesting. But because before I talk about what came to my mind, I would want to first talk to some of the things you've said and the comments by persons. Let's understand inflation first of all and what we're talking about. That prices of food items will drop does not mean there may be no inflation. And because inflation as an index has dropped, it doesn't mean that prices of food items will drop. So what we've seen in the drop in inflation measures is simply that the rate at which food prices have increased month on month has reduced. So it's wrong to expect food prices to have dropped. They would not have dropped, not month on month. And I can say this myself because I have actually gone out to the field. A lot of prices are relatively stable. Some food items have increased in quantity per kilogram or per half kilogram, and only slightly increased in quantity. And that's just to show that some degree of harvesting has taken place. These are all reasons why we would get this. Now, another thing we should look at is the fact that the National Bureau of Statistics emphasizes the difference between headline inflation and core inflation. So headline inflation is broad and covers everything, and that's what dropped slightly by 0.8%, to let you know it is very, very slight. And part of the reason we're seeing that is because in some states in the north it's increased, and in some states in the southern part it's decreased. But also in certain northern states you had a decrease. Core inflation is inflation measured without looking at the prices of food and energy. And so that looks at, it filters out those pretty volatile items, which tends to move it up. And that again has dropped. Now, in a discussion we had a while back, I did say that there will be a level at which we will experience price sort of
price reduction?
Yes, well, not so much price reduction, but a certain aversion to buying things, and people will start looking for substitutes. That only makes economic sense. And so purchase or demand on certain items are dropping. And if you're a trader and you deal in those items, what you want to do is look for ways to reduce your costs and therefore drop your prices. So we're beginning to see that in certain items.
All right. A lot of people are saying that maybe the CBN policy is beginning to work, but others will say that no, what we're actually seeing is a reflection of the harvest season, that many crops are, a lot of people are beginning to harvest what they actually cultivated, and of course that is having an impact on the prices, on food prices. What will you say to that?
I totally agree with that. We're seeing the results of harvest, but again, as we talk of harvest, we know that we're in August and this is early harvest, and the harvesting will take place because the planting season was over a period of about 3 months, and so up until September, October, we still need to do some harvesting before the dry season planting.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll talk more on that when we come back from this short break. We're going on a very quick break. When we come back, Dr. Abdulrahman Abu-Hamisu, a political economist and a lecturer from the University of Abuja, will also join us to give us his own perspectives on the new indices from the National Bureau of Statistics. Don't go away. Glad to have you back. It's still Business Daily right here on Trust Television. Of course, we're looking at the inflation numbers that was released yesterday by the National Bureau of Statistics, which shows that the inflation rate, the CPI indeed, did drop by 0.8% from 34.19% in June to 33.40% in the month of July. And my guest here in the studio, Dr. Adegboyega Adebajo, is an investment banker. He's been talking to us about that. I'm also expecting Dr. Abdulrahman Abu-Hamisu, a political economist and lecturer from the University of Abuja, to join the conversation and, of course, give us his own perspective with regards to the NBS numbers that was released yesterday. Dr. Adebajo, before we went on that break, you were talking about a decline in inflation does not necessarily imply a price reduction. Yeah. Can you expatiate more on that? There are a lot of people that think that once there's a decline in inflation, price should naturally drop.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, inflation is an index. It measures a general rise or in prices, and it looks more at the rate at which prices are rises. And the reason I was making the distinction between headline inflation and core inflation is because certain items are excluded when we look at core inflation, and that's food items and energy. Again, even with headline inflation, you typically would have a basket of items you would look at. Now, if those prices do not change at all, but some rise and some items drop, you would have a measure at the end of the day that indicates that inflation has dropped slightly. Just because we had a drop in June does not mean we are there yet. I've said before, I think it's not right to expect that prices will go back to what they were in 2022. It is not likely, not with the fundamentals being what they were. Increase in petroleum prices, exchange rate changes, certain price levels are here to stay. What is more important is that when prices become stable and people can start to plan based on prices and expectations, then it makes it easier for people to get along. So the drop in inflation is an indication that stability is starting to come in.
No, you don't see this as a one-off. Do you see it as a trend?
Well, it is not yet.
Because we've seen a one trend for 19 months.
Yes.
This is more like a twist. The first time we're having this in 19 months. Do you see this continues?
So it's just the first time. I would hope it continues, but there are certain things to look forward to in the next couple of months from a risk perspective, which I think people should be mindful of and be aware of. The NIMET has indicated that certain states should start getting ready for flooding.
Absolutely.
Like I said, yes, the harvesting season has started, and harvest will continue into September. And as the waters come down, hopefully enough food will be stored and cleared away from where they can be damaged from flooding. Because if the floods destroy most of the storage or some of the farms before they are harvested, we would end up with a situation where prices will just have to rise because the volumes are not there. Scarcity comes in and prices will go up again. But I'm hoping this will become a trend. I'm hoping we can start to see some degree of stability, because yes, there has been price resistance. People are looking at substitutes. Certain people have changed the quantity of items bought and which items they actually buy. So demand isn't the way it used to be. So that's certain.
Okay, so what sort of reaction do you expect from CBN at their next monetary policy committee meeting? Because they have vowed to return to evidence-based monetary policy when they took office, and the reason is the aim is actually to restore stakeholders' confidence in Nigerian financial system. Do you see a form of a reaction, a positive reaction? Because for only this year alone, the MPR has been increased by about 800 basis points.
Yeah, so you're asking me to look deep into the minds of the gentlemen who sit on the
absolutely.
MPC. I will venture to say that I think they fully well understand that this is not a trend yet. It's a welcome indication to them, and perhaps this year we may see a situation where the MPC rate is left at where it is rather than decreased or increased, just to see what happens. Because when trends like this, or when indicators like this happen, you need to be able to identify what is making it happen, and as such you want to leave certain things constant, and for me I think the MPC rate should be left constant, the MPR, just so that we can be able to identify properly what are the reasons why we have this drop in inflation. The tendency is towards stability, no doubt.
Indeed. So you expect them to maintain status quo?
Yeah, well, that's
because you know the core mandate of CBN, of course, is to manage the exchange rate and, of course, control inflation, which is what they think they've been doing over the years. But people keep saying that the CBN policies doesn't appear to be working properly.
People, you see, there's no way you're going to finish the MPC meeting on a Tuesday, make an announcement, and overnight we start to see effects. It doesn't work like that in economies. There's always a lag between causation and effect, and the consistent increase in NPR we've seen over time is bound to have its effects. There are certain areas where effects are immediate, and there are certain areas where it will take some time to get to. So that's the situation we have. I believe that what the CBN is doing is having an effect, and we need to give it time to see how that effect is affecting inflation in particular.
Or do you see maybe a disconnection between the monetary authority and, of course, the fiscal authority as one of the major problems we've been having in our economic management?
Well, that's always a play-off, and you know they say that, and you always have that phrase in economics, all other things being equal, and they say the day two economists agree, that's the day the discipline will end, because as you work towards managing a certain aspect of the economy, the measures and the policies you take may have an effect that's totally unwelcome on the another aspect of the economy. So that's the kind of thing I feel we're seeing with fiscal policy and with the CBN's monetary policy. Let's not forget that the government needs to fund the budget and needs to raise money, and that thrust is still there. But as much as possible, we've seen instances, for instance, NAMA increased fees for airlines, and there was a hue and cry about that, and you know the instructions came not to increase the fees yet. So we've seen instances like that, because those are acts that will directly affect prices instantly, and so by and by, over time, we will start to see a fair degree of convergence in terms of policy efforts. But we should always bear in mind, as we start to correct one aspect of the economy, some other aspect is going to react.
Indeed. Let's talk about Nigerians who are at the receiving end of all of this. Now, a lot of them doesn't seem to believe statistics, because they go to the market, they see the reality on the ground. But when you're telling a Nigerian that the cost of food have dropped, in his own imagination, you heard what some of feedbacks there. Yes, those people there, those comments, you see their reaction there to these numbers. In what language do you think an explanation can be provided for this group of people to understand that, look, this thing is going to be a gradual thing?
You know, there's a phrase I learned, and I got to quite like, and it relates to statistics, and I hope statisticians will not take offense at this, but someone has said before that there are three types of lies. You've got white lies, you've got damned lies, and then you have statistics. Now, the interesting thing is about statistics is that it's just a measure, it's just an index, it's data. Ultimately, it's about how you interpret the data, and before you even collect the data, it's about what type of data points do you need to collect. That's why, you know, it says that statistics can lie. And I'll give you an example. I could come visit you at home once only, and the first time I come to your house, you're not there. When I see you in the office, I'm going to tell you, hey, all the time I come to your house, you are never there, because 100% of the time, and 100% is just once. So if I go the second time and you're there, and I can say, I'll just tell somebody, half the time I go to your house, you're never there. So, and that's the truth. But it's about how it's presented and the details. The devil is always in the details. So when we get figures from statistics, we need to be able to understand what is behind those indices we see, what are the data points that are being measured, and why are these data points in fact chosen to reflect what we want to show from the data we're looking at. And I'll go, there's every good reason why people will say, oh, we don't see that, because they go to the markets every day. And those traders there would always be mindful about dropping prices first, because they will price based on replacement costs until they're able to buy stock at a lower price than what they bought before. They will probably not want to reduce their margins. Again, for most farm products that are perishable, no trader wants to keep them on the shelves for too long, and so it's best to sell
so we
them.
saw the price of tomatoes dropping recently.
Exactly, and that was because of the protests, because where there were no market days, those things were kept there, and there was a need to get rid of them, get some cash and buy new stock.
Absolutely. So you think the price is going to go back to where it was?
Well, not because prices are high, but because of the other factors we've mentioned about flooding, if it takes place, if the harvest is affected, if petrol prices remain constant the way they are, people will start to adjust and take that. So like I said, it's not so much about price reduction, it's about stability. A lot of people have adjusted in terms of accepting certain prices and taking certain items off their shopping list. So those who sell would also need to adjust in terms of what people buy and what price is affordable to people.
Okay, I'll take you back to CBN again, and I want to ask this question. Do you think this slowdown in inflation rate underscore the influence of CBN monetary policy reforms on the economy?
Well, I did say that given causation and effect, there's no doubt about it that all the increases we've seen so far this year in the MPR will have an effect some way or the other. It may have taken 7 months to do so, but it's inescapable to the fact that it must have an effect one way or the other. And let's not forget that traders need to sometimes fund their working capital, and some of CBN's policies have affected banks, and it has also affected the interest rates. So where there are ongoing debt arrangements, interest rates would certainly have gone up where possible, depending on the perception of risk from the bank. But quite a few banks are starting to be successful in terms of their capital raising, and as a bank, you don't want to have all that cash sitting on your books. You want to create risk assets. You want to be able to use the cash to generate returns, because end of the year, you have to give your shareholders something.
Absolutely.
Right.
Hold your thought, Dr. Adegboyega there. Let's get Dr. Abdulrahman Abu-Hamisu. He joins me virtually from Abuja here. Dr. Abu-Hamisu, good morning.
Good morning.
All right, it's a pleasure to have you on Business Daily. Let's quickly get your reaction to the NBC report that was released yesterday, which showed that inflation numbers dropped to 33.40%.
Well, I wish to congratulate those that are responsible for the delivering of such reduction. It is a commendable one. If they've done something good, it is in our interest to commend them. And then where they've done something that we're not happy with, we point it out to them to let them know that what they've done is not acceptable. So the same way we will condemn them or criticize them if they've done something that is not acceptable, the same way we should commend them when they've done something commendable.
Indeed. Do you see this becoming a trend?
Well, I doubt, because of some several factors that are in view. In some part of Nigeria today, farmers are beginning to cry over lack of rainfall. In some of their farm produces are drying off, and then we envisage that if the trend continue, it may contribute to poor harvest, because substantially almost 80% of our farmers depend on rain for their crops. And then we are not given to farming all season. We don't have the capacity to utilize our arable lands and marshy lands because of lack of dams. So if that is the case, coupled with the issue of banditry, kidnapping for ransom, other farmers' conflict that are ravaging the areas that traditionally used to feed the nation.
Hello, doctor.
Yes. All right. Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead with your thoughts.
All right. So added to the issue of the insurgency, we shouldn't deceive ourselves that most of the cereal that we consume in this country, including cattle and other range of animals, usually come from our neighboring countries, specifically Niger, Chad, and Niger, Chad, and majority Niger and Chad. And so we have insurgency that is ravaging those areas that we are fighting. So all of this constellation of factors may affect the trend you would like to see. The other aspect of it again is the cost the cost of transportation from one point to another. You see, the prices may reduce in some certain areas, but I bet you in some certain areas the prices will not reduce. There are places in this country that motorists are purchasing fuel above the approved rate. In some other places, it gets to as high as 1,500 naira per liter. And then what the farmers are grappling with today are basically two factors. One, high cost of input that they needed to farm, and the other thing again is cost of transportation. Absolutely. Once you factor these two into consideration, and then we're not able to bring them down substantially, we don't see the trend to continue, except if we do a lot to bring the issues of banditry, kidnapping, insurgency, high cost of transportation under control.
All right. Doctor, what will you say to Nigerians who believe that statistics are not reflections of what actually happened in the economy?
You see, statistics is a reality when it is done with good faith. But where statistics are manufactured and they don't correlate with people's standard of living, they don't correlate with their existence. It is concocted just to make people believe that government is working. Then you find a situation, and the situation will be that yes, and the situation will be that the fact will confront those statistics. And once fact and reality of the people confront those statistics, then you come to realize that the statistics are not real, they are not true, they are mere concoction. And that is why most of our MDAs today, when you go to our MDAs and you're looking for statistics, the first thing they will tell you is there are no statistics. It's not because there are no statistics. Statistics are a product of people. They are a product of deliberate effort, painstaking effort that will reflect the reality of the people. But because of corruption, abuse of office, we spend these monies and then we decide to manufacture statistics that will make our organization to look good, that will make government to look good. And this is the crux of the problem. Over time, these statistics have been abused in Nigeria, where statistics does not represent the reality of the people. And that is why people are skeptical about government statistics in this country. Today, if you put government statistics forward in Nigeria, and there is a statistic from IMF or World Bank, Nigerians will gladly embrace the one that is coming from IMF and World Bank instead of the one that is coming from the government of Nigeria. That is to tell you the level of distrust.
Doctor, let's quickly talk about the CBN influence now on these data that we are having. The CBN core mandate is to stabilize naira and, of course, reduce inflation. Will you say the effort of the APS Bank so far is beginning to yield positive results?
Yes, if the statistic that MBS has given is a concrete one that reflects the reality on ground, we will say we should congratulate them for a job that they are beginning to do. I will say well done because it's a process. I want to see the prices reduced to the barest minimum that the economy can afford to support. So I won't say it's over yet. We're saying that it's a process and they want to see the trend downwards to continue. So for me, it's about the reality of the people. So even if we've seen during Obasanjo era, where we witnessed a lot of growth without development, advancement, and impact on the life of the people. So it's not about growth. It's not about stability of the economy. It's about the impact of the economy on the life of the people, especially those low-income earners that are taking a living from the economy. So for me, we have to commend them because this is the fact that is before us. So since we don't have any other proof to the contrary, we will say that kudos to them and they should do more to bring down the prices and stabilize the economy the more.
All right, before I let you go, Doctor, what sort of reaction do you expect from CBN at their next MPC meeting?
Well, I want to caution them because our economy is not a high-tech economy. Our economy is a semi-agrarian economy where you have interface between the rural communities and the urban communities. And if you want to deploy high-tech policies for an agrarian economy, then you are going to have a problem. I think that is our problem. We are thinking that we are at par with America, with Singapore, with Malaysia in terms of development, which is not the truth. We have more vulnerable people in Nigeria. We have more farmers that are dependent on crude method of farming with outdated implements and so on and so forth. So for me, there is a need to put into perspective global trend, but especially local trend because every economy is local before it is international. Indeed. So you can't have an import-dependent economy and then you want to apply the solutions that high-income countries that are exporting will apply to their economy. So there is a need for balance and there is a need for indices from below to guide whatever they are going to do, not because of what the Hong Kong stock market is saying.
Of course. Thank you so much, Dr. Abdulrahman Abu-Hamisu, political economy lecturer, University of Abuja. Thank you for your time on Business Daily.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, back in the studio, Dr. Adebajo. You listen to me just in 30 seconds now. Right. He did say that the NBS statistic may not be, he has his doubts anyway, and that may not actually be the original statistics. Maybe are they doing this to make the Nigerians feel good?
Well, again, I refer you to what I said earlier about statistics. We always have at the back of our mind when we look at our figures that there's a possible variance, plus or minus. And when you start to factor that in it, you start to look in terms of whether you feel you want to accept that index or you want to add to it or remove from it.
Okay, Dr. Adegboyega Adebajo, investment banker, I must thank you for your time and indeed contribution on Business Daily today. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right, and with that is a wrap on the show today. We'll be back again on Monday. I am Yusuf Akogun.